Okay, it turned 5 o'clock. Will you please rise and join me for the pledge of the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, you have the agenda in front of you. Is there approval of tonight's agenda?
I so move.
Okay, Angie moves. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor of the agenda signify by saying aye. Aye. Pose same sign. Motion carries. We have no action items, so for our study session, we'll begin with Jim Querum and a staffing update.
Good afternoon. Mark, you hear me okay?
I sure can, yes.
Okay. Just wanted to give a brief update of where we're at as of today, at least. Still might be a couple of changes, but give you an idea of where we are as far as staffing, very briefly. And I thought I'd start by making a comparison to last year. So what you see in front of you is the 2016-17 and 2017-18 as we have it. Similar dates, and you can see student numbers. This does not include ALC numbers, just elementary building, middle school, and the high school building. Just to give you an idea, comparison of where we're at. So we're up a little bit. We've been very busy. Angela's been busy the last few weeks, a lot of registrations. Since we do centralized registration now in the district office, we get to count people real time as they come in, and so the elementary has ticked up, and so has the middle school and the high school. So last year, as far as FTEs, and again, there's a difference between. I talked about this before. There's a difference between FTEs and real bodies because some people aren't 1.0 FTE. So last year, if you scrape away all the licensed administrators, there's about 291 FTEs. I think it's about 295 or 97 actual people. And right now, we're at 295.55 FTEs. I didn't count the actual number of people, but it's probably closer to 298, 299, something like that. That's where we're at right now, that we have hired. Right. Okay. You know me, Neil, methodical, we're going along. So that's where we are, just to kind of give you a comparison. So right now, total number of FTEs, we're up over about 4.5. And I'll talk about what some of that looks like here in just a second. So any questions on the numbers at least? Okay. So again, the total number of licensed staff are 295.55. The question came up as of this morning. We have 28 new licensed staff. I believe most of those are classroom teachers. But, you know, that also includes things like speech, social workers. The 4 new elementary counselors would be included in there too. So, and some program shifts. The positions that we currently have open have been open for some time, at least 2 of them. Speech, there is like no one out there. Once in a while, we'll get somebody that will inquire that has a license. A lot of that is going to contract services now, where we have companies that are offering the service, and we hire them to do speech. They'll even do it like with Skype or Google Hangouts. They'll do it distant learning-wise. So it's one of those that we've had a tough time with, and we have an opening, and it'll probably end up being contract services.
And there's just one opening in speech right now?
There is actually 2 positions that are open in speech.
Tammy at 1, and she said she was talking to one person about contracted, so she may have a little update from you.
Right. Okay. And then Yep, speech and language pathologists, yes. And then the other ones that we did have open, but we're gonna hold on them right now. We had one special ed position in the elementary that was split between two buildings and one at the high school. And I talked with Tammy this morning, and she prefers to hold on those right now. It looks as if the teacher-student ratios are pretty favorable as the actual number of real kids that we think will show up. And so she prefers to wait on those right now and see if the numbers that she has projected now, if there's any change to that. So really, the only thing we have open is speech at this time and the high school instructional coach, which we just reopened now. So we're seeing if any current staff are interested in that, and that would do some shifting then, probably from one department, whoever would be willing to take that on. So that's where we're at. We're up a little over 4, which makes sense. We've done a lot of shifting around, but we really added those 4 elementary counselors as brand-new positions, and that's pretty close to where we're at as far as the count. And the new teacher started today with their 3 days of new teacher orientation, so. Any questions on that? Yeah, we added back, basically. Yep, so. And those are filled, yep. They had interviews the next day, and they hired, yep. Pretty good pool yet for elementary. It's in other areas that are a little tougher.
Of the 28, where are most of them located? Do you have any idea on that?
That's kind of all over. You have the 4 new elementary counselor positions. We had some shifting around in the ALC where we added a position. The high school, because they have 65, 70 more students, there's 2 or 3 more FTEs that are shifted up there, so they're kind of all over the district, to be honest. If you want specifics on that, I can sure get them.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Jim. Next, we have Mary Jo Dorman and the MultiTier System K through 5.
Ashley's passing out, it's a work in progress what we're doing in elementary, but is our multi-tier system of support, K-5. And really, just what a multi-tier system is just setting up instructions so that we have a safety net for all students. So if you start at the top, we start with Tier 1, or we call that also our core instruction, just meaning that all students, whatever grade level they're in, we'll just take 5th grade. If you're a 5th grade student, you will receive 5th grade core instruction, 5th grade level standards. And that's both academic and social emotional, and reading, math, social, and science. It includes engagement, growth mindset, really having engaged classroom, students continuing to learn, challenge themselves, and that's Tier 1. And then we go down to Tier 2, and that's for the students who maybe need just a little extra support. So maybe they're getting a little bit more time in a guided reading group, or they're getting daily guided reading groups. So a lot of the Tier 2 instruction is still taking place in the classroom, but it's teachers being aware of how do we need to serve those kids to make sure we're closing that gap. And then Tier 3 is more intensive intervention, and that's usually pull-out services, be our ADSES teachers who are doing reading and math interventions, or more targeted interventions. SPED would either fall in Tier 3, or you can have SPED Tier 4, but we just have Tier 3 on here currently. Another thing about the multi-tier system is that you have a universal screener. So every student K through 5 is given a reading and math assessment. It's a quick 15-minute assessment in 2nd grade through 5th grade. A little bit longer in K1 just because it's a one-on-one test, testing individual skills. And with those screeners, again, it's a national screener. It's out of the University of Minnesota. And most schools in Minnesota have now went to, it's called FAST. And that screener then takes the top 15%, saying, okay, these students are above track. The next 40% are, they're all in a grade level range, and then the bottom 15% are where we'd place our Tier 3 students. You can see on the right-hand side of the chart, we have some of the ways to access Tiers 2, 3, and 4, such as Reading Core. Reading Core has specific guidelines on how we can serve students in Reading Core, so those are just delivered to us from AmeriCorps, but EL, there's specific guidelines on which students can be served EL. SPED, the same thing, special education. ADSES is our neediest students. And then we have success coaches who can help with any students to help close the economic and racial gaps. And then we have school social workers, and now we'll also have school counselors. And then we just brainstorm a list of all supports we have in elementary to assist with serving students, and just kind of where we're at right now with this document. So I know I talk fast, but it's an overview. Any questions?
Mary Jo, maybe I missed, what's ICUE?
Oh, IQ. IQ is just our data warehouse of where all the data gets stored. So when we take individual tests or MCA, all the data on a particular student or class is placed in a data warehouse
Okay, thanks.
called IQ.
So Mayor Joe, the bottom line is we have a lot of things in place to help every student, no matter what's going on in their life and the challenges that they're having, and especially
the
now the
intent.
counselors.
Yeah. And the Minnesota Department of Ed, just all, if you're a title-funded school, you are required to have a plan like this as well. So we're meeting the guidelines within our title funding.
Is there anything new on here added this year, or are these just the same things that we've been having last year and everything too?
Pretty similar to prior years. Again, school social worker will be a new addition, and we've been working on laying out how we will support students more specifically. So it's just not a whim of how we serve students, classroom interventions, what else, or whatever it needs, or whatever we need, I should say. So there's some things we're still working on. That's why I'm still calling it a working document.
Since we're adding the counselors, do you feel that there's clear direction on what they need to do, how they're going to help and so on going forward?
Yeah, I do. The need was very apparent on why we're moving in that direction. Our school social workers are funded 70% through special ed funding, 30% general ed, but we know that the needs are more than 30% with the social emotional needs that kids are coming to school with. So our social workers weren't having enough time, or we were edging over where the fund balance should be of how we were allocated the money. And school counselors are able to go in and they'll do classroom instruction on those social emotional behaviors, so we can be more proactive, preventative, do some modeling, getting more information out to parents. So their role is really just from a general ed perspective on doing the social emotional piece even more intentional in our classrooms. And then following up with attendance issues, phone calls home, working with, other parties if need be, so.
Any other questions? Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have the elementary and secondary handbooks, Mary Jo and Kathy Niembor.
So the first slide is what is going to be added to all the student handbooks. Oh, I have it right here, sorry. Maybe. And so this is the food service negative balance notification that has been worked on in the district. I know Lori has spent a lot of time on this. There is a full document, but these are the pieces that will go in all of our handbooks.
Lori, you want to give a little background on where we're at with this?
This is actually driven by a regulation, so the USDA is requiring that we have these pieces regarding how we notify parents of a low or negative balance, and then our process, plan of action for taking action when there is an unpaid meal balance. And so we pretty much just put in writing what our practice has been. We haven't changed anything. In our district, for example, a child is served a regular meal regardless if they have money in their account or not. The only difference is if they have a negative balance or no money, then they cannot purchase a la carte. But the regular standard meal is always available to the students regardless of their balance level.
So there's a full document, and these pieces then will go into all of our parent handbooks coming up for the fall. Then some secondary handbook updates. With the availability of Chromebooks, we need to update our handbooks. Southwest Middle School is going to make a change from last year, and that is they're looking at a checkout system with parent permission for 7th graders. We may have had some 6th graders who had challenges with Chromebooks last year. Now they moved to 7th grade, they're one-to-one, and they can take them home. And so we've had some parents inquire and some staff inquire, how can we help our students who maybe not as responsible as we would like them to be? And so they're implementing a checkout system, hoping to avoid excessive damages and/or charges or inappropriate use of the Chromebooks for families. The ALC, we talked at the board retreat this spring about how do we make Chromebooks accessible to our students to check out at the ALC. They're not part of the high school one-to-one. So working with our techs and Jim Queeram and Southwest, we're dismantling 2 labs at Southwest, shifting some of those desktop computers to Riverland, to the ALC, which will free up about 10 of our older Chromebooks to be made available for checkout. We've not done that before, but I think it certainly seemed at the board retreat that this is something board members want us to investigate. And so we're gonna give this a try. We haven't asked, students haven't asked for checkout before, but we've not had it before. So we'll have 10 computers available for our ALC students to check out. At the high school, we of course, with the one-to-one, have updated the handbook, which will be available in print and online, and I'll show you that in a second. And we want that referenced in the student handbook. There's increased expectations of students' use of the devices, and then we'll do some training on Gmail accounts for students, as well as the enterprise version of Schoology. There also is online-only purchase of insurance for Chromebook for families, and it's $23 per year, and there's a deadline on that with the insurance company of October 6th. And also in updating our acceptable use policy, we have an updated parent signature page that we actually updated last year across the district, and we just need to update that to match the policy. So along with that, on our school webpage under Parent and Student Tools, there is a link, Connected Ed Learning, and that is what all of our high school parents will launch this with their students when they get their Chromebooks on August 15th, and this will walk them through the expectations. We also have printed versions of this. We'll have printed consent forms that go out with the parent letters, but they also can do this online. So this is Connected Ed, and it's really an update from last year and now includes a high school portal and the Southwest portal, so it's all in one place. And just as a note, we talked just briefly this afternoon, all of our secondary schools keep multiple copies of printed handbooks available for parents who do not have access online. In review of some of our procedures, we noted that our emergency procedures for our secondary schools look different in our printed handbooks, and so we're going to a common evacuation, fire, lockdown, and tornado procedures, so it's the same across the secondary. The elementary had already done this with a little bit less language than here, so updating that to be the same across all of our secondary schools. And then an update to the high school procedures on disruptive acts. We had initially, that language was students who were engaged in a physical or verbal assault or attack will be initially suspended for a minimum of 5 days, and we've changed that language to up to 5 days to allow our deans and assistant principal and principals some discretion when it comes to suspensions. And I think that's it for the secondary. So, any questions on secondary?
Just kind of going back a second on the Chromebooks, so people can get insurance, but they're not required to?
Correct.
So then what if someone doesn't get insurance and they break their Chromebook, then they have to pay the total amount, or how does that work?
So we're working with Southwest, and they have a list of charges that were common last year, and Dan Halverson, who's our tech in charge of repairing all of those devices or sending them in for repair, has been working with Michael Davis, and they are coming up with, all right, what does it cost to repair a screen, to repair a keyboard? So we hope to have that information available at conferences. So based on their experience, we now kind of know how much does it cost. So, yep.
And as far as the elementary student handbooks, we didn't make any policy changes for this next year, so there are no changes in the handbook. And much like secondary, we have hard copies available, and we also did this last year, but most people are preferring just the online version. And then all the elementary handbooks are listed under each building, so it's easy accessible to parents. Should they choose to look for a certain section, read the whole thing, it's available. Any questions?
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Oh, you stay.
Next, we have the exploitation through technology update. Kathy Niebor.
Yeah, so Laura Sutherland was one of the presenters here a couple weeks ago, and I had the opportunity, met with her on August 2nd. She is the Safe Harbor Regional Navigator out of Rochester, so she was in Albert Lea. We met, talked about really where is it most appropriate to talk about the exploitation through technology curriculum that she had presented. And we kind of settled on 7th grade. She has presented it as low as 5th grade, but really it's seems to be more applicable to 7th graders' increased use of technology and cell phones in particular. She shared a lot of the same information she shared with you via email. She is going to probably come into our health classes, although we do also have a technology class that she could offer this in. When teachers come back next week, we'll sit down and have a conversation. Steve Kovach and John Double and I met and talked about where would this best be taught. And although we've kind of talked about, we could also do a whole group of 7th graders. She really prefers groups of 30 or less because she does small group rather than 60 to 120 students. She's going to come in and do an hour presentation to staff after school first. She comes in and offers the instruction all day to our 7th graders. There's a letter that goes home explaining what the discussion is going to be. And then we're talking possibly in the spring when she comes back to do a presentation for parents. She seems to think that in the spring you get a little bit, maybe more parents out than in the fall when they're super busy. She also said she has been videotaped before doing her work with classes, and we would have permission, of course, to post that online if that's something we wanted to do. So she seems to get working with schools and how many things we're asked to do and how we can do this effectively. So looking forward to doing that with our 7th graders. We had a conversation about kind of what we're doing already in the schools with ATOD and some of our work at the ALC. There's a new program that she is now licensed to offer. It's called I'm Not a Number, also about sex trafficking. She's starting it with a small group in Rochester, It is only a 5-week program rather than the 10-week My Life, My Choices program. Again, the goal is hopefully to be able to offer something to schools that is maybe not, takes as much time away from the standards and curriculum that is expected of us. But she sent me that information and is going to follow up with us and possibly our high school teachers on if that is something we want to take a look at. And then tomorrow and Friday afternoon, all of our secondary teachers will be able to hear a panel of Freeborn County staff, our community partners that we work with. You can see the name of the lead public health nurse. Maureen Williams-Zelnick is going to come talk with what kind of resources, My Life, My Choices, Safe Dates, et cetera, could our teachers use curriculum-wise. Amy Geyer and Alex Routh are going to come talk about truancy, and Lana Howe is going to come in, and she would really take the whole afternoon. She has a lot of information to share, so she's going to kind of fill in the gap, and then Dana Nelson's going to come in. She's the new person in charge of child protection. So 2 panels, tomorrow afternoon and Friday afternoon, what county resources are out there to support families, students, parents, and then what resources they can bring to the schools. And we kind of decided to do it this way rather than just focus on the health teachers or the biology teacher or the science teacher, so that all our staff get a deeper understanding of how we collaborate with the county. So.
Questions?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kathy.
Yep.
I think that's all we have for this evening, so is there a motion to adjourn? Okay, motion's been, got a motion and a second. So all those in favor of adjourning the meeting signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Meeting is adjourned.